Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle Dracula Horror Movie Podcast. This week we celebrate our favorite semi-pagan holiday with the classic John Carpenter's Halloween. Bear in mind that if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the upcoming Ben 10 comic series from IDW. With me from Austin is Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man and a contributing writer to Rockabilly Online and Tales from the Grave from Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. Also in Austin, back after many, many weeks, my co-creator on the Victorian Met comic Clockworks, which is doing extraordinarily well from Humanoids, as well as writer on the manga Psychom from Right Stuff and Tokyopop and lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars. Say hello, Tony.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, hello. And also in Denver with color commentary, host of the mom-oriented podcast Pod Moms, attorney Julia Guzman. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Joy has been freaking out because a weird decoration outside the door is flapping and banging.
It's not rapping at my door, and Tony suggests that I need to, to quote him, secure that shit or take it down.
Yes. Before the podcast, I was telling them to secure the decorations because either A, you're going to drive yourself crazy, or B, when the axe murderer comes and actually knocks, you're going to go, oh, that's that stupid wind. There's those decorations. And I like my friends. I don't want you axe murderers.
Right. So
oh, my gosh.
We have to be able to know that it's actually there.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Halloween, this is going to be one of those ones that we're going to talk about, you know, like Terminator or one of those films that every one of us has seen. And nevertheless, we're going to try and talk about it with an eye towards what it would be like if you had never heard of it before. Okay. Halloween is a 1978 American independent slasher horror film directed and scored by John Carpenter, co-written with producer Deborah Hill and starring Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis in her film debut. The film was the first installment in what became the Halloween franchise. The plot is set in the fictional Midwestern town of Haddonfield, Illinois. And it starts out in 1963. Little Michael kills his sister with a kitchen knife, and then 15 years later he escapes and comes back to town and stalks teenager Laurie Strode with her friends. Michael's psychiatrist, Dr. Sam Loomis, Donald Pleasance, suspects Michael's intention and follows him to Haddonfield to try to prevent him from killing again. That's Halloween. That is Halloween if you've never, ever heard of Halloween. If you come across it on a TV screen and you go, Halloween? What the heck is this? That's what it is. So, gosh, I think this is the most exciting movie we've ever had. I'm just shaking with excitement over getting a chance to talk about this movie. So let's get our first impressions and try to keep it just a couple of minutes, and then we'll get into the many, many things we have to talk about. So let's go like this. Tony, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go. Tony, welcome back. What are your first impressions of Halloween? And I'm also curious if this was your first time seeing it in a while or if you watch it all the time.
I haven't seen it in a while. In fact, the only place to rent it, it seems like online, because I recently have been furloughed, not due to this craziness that's going on now, but previous craziness. So I only had one place to find it, and it was on iTunes, which is weird that it's the only place. You can get most of the other Halloweens elsewhere, but iTunes is the only place to get this one. And let me tell you, it was not as easy as my previous Amazon experiences. But I need to have it on Blu-ray, and I'm not sure why I don't. I need to rectify that when I actually get money coming back in. But oh man, it's awesome. It's really weird how maligned it was at the time, and how, unlike maybe like Chainsaw Massacre, it actually is really tame compared to a lot of the stuff we can see on TV now.
Yeah.
And I also realized, like, doing drugs and having premarital sex, a lot of horror, I also realized, could be prevented if parents vetted their babysitters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I realized that this movie was called The Babysitter Murders before it was called Halloween. But let me tell you, these are some terrible babysitters, and a lot of this could be prevented, not only in this movie, but in many other movies. But please, oh
And
please,
these aren't even the worst babysitters that there are.
No, that's true. But many bad horror movie things could be prevented if you just had better babysitters.
Mm-hmm.
So let that be a warning. But this movie is awesome. Carpenter is really working it, like, for the budget, everything. It's really awesome and has set up so many. I mean, it's often copied, but rarely does it. Any of the copies reach what this one does, and for often hundreds of times the budget.
Yeah, no kidding. Drew, is it even possible to have a first impression of Halloween?
I don't think it is possible to have a virginal Laurie Strode-esque opinion of this movie. This is pop culture iconography at its. This is Michael Myers at this point is up there with the Lugosi Dracula. He's just part of our pop culture landscape, and I will echo everything that Tony has already said. This is an amazing film and the triumph of low-budget filmmaking. And I watch this movie every October.
Yeah. Julia, what are your first thoughts? And I'm curious, did you remember it very well, or had you seen it?
Oh, I mean, there's definitely some scenes that are just burned into my brain, and I think the scene when Michael is quote unquote dead in the background of the room, and Jamie Lee Curtis is sitting in the doorway because she's an idiot and she doesn't just leave the house with the kids, and he just sits up and he's out of focus, and then he slowly stands, he kind of looks over her, then he stands up, out of focus, walks toward her, suddenly gets in focus, right? So he's about to touch her, and then she moves away. That is, to me, out there with Jack Nicholson busting through the door. Here's Johnny. It's there's a few scenes like that, and that just in your memory are the iconic horror movie brilliant scenes that just scare the living crap out of you. I love this movie for that reason, because there's things like that. And for the music and the mood, I mean, there's definitely, I think the acting is terrible on the part of the horrible babysitters, aside from Jamie Lee Curtis' side, of course. But all the background characters are just the acting is so awful. But that's the only thing I don't like about it. Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. And Jason has forbidden me from. I was going to spend the entire podcast just singing, "This is Halloween, this is Halloween, Halloween." But he says I can't do that.
You already did that whole episode, yes.
I know, but now
you weren't there for that episode, Jason.
That is the only episode of our show that I was not actually on. Yeah, that's true.
It was our attempt at a spin-off, but it didn't happen.
That's right. Julia was the Enos of the Castle Dracula Horror Movie podcast.
Nice.
I think she did an excellent job as Master of Ceremonies. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So, no, for my part,
I like to think of myself more as the Mork and Mindy, but whatever.
Right. Well, that is a long-lasting spin. There you go. I'm the mirth of the gang. Sorry. Mirth, lest anybody know, played by John Winters. It's a long story. Never mind. Okay. I watch this movie just like Drew every Halloween. I've had versions of it as our personal technology has changed. I had a VHS from Anchor Bay, and then I had the 25th anniversary DVD, also from Anchor Bay, and I just got the 35th anniversary Blu-ray, yet again from Anchor Bay, because once Anchor Bay got their hands on Halloween, they have figured out a way to mint a new copy of it every opportunity they get, which is fine, because they're always great. The new Blu-ray is beautiful. So I am always rediscovering this movie. I love its mood. I love watching it. I love losing myself in it. And the performances, I disagree with Julia. I really enjoy them. I was not troubled at all by the girls' performances. I just found them all very charming. I'm also shocked. This is the first movie called Halloween, to my knowledge. I mean, this is
well, that's why that's why they changed it. Evidently they were like, hey, by the way, there's not a movie called Halloween, which just seems crazy, but
Right. It sort of boggles the mind.
By the way, speaking of boggling the mind, how did we not do this movie last year? It seems like how did we get through an entire Halloween season without doing this movie?
Dance card, I think.
I think we were neck deep in Stephen King last year.
Oh, maybe.
And that's what stopped us.
And we may very well, once we get back into another Stephen King retrospective, that'll keep us busy for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But
how have we gone this long without doing a John Carpenter movie? That was the other thing that I was thinking about.
We don't venture up into the 70s very much, although I suppose, The Omen fits into this period. I mean, Halloween, this is 1978. In fact, let's get right into it, because we should talk about the importance of this movie and where it fits in time. So Halloween comes around in 1978. So you mentioned, Tony, Chainsaw Massacre, and that comes in 73. So this is 5 years after that. And just like that movie was very, very intense, with actually almost nothing happening. There's very little gore, if any, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Same thing with this movie. It is intense and scary, and not a great deal actually happens on screen.
I want to say that we talked about, I think last time, about making a good movie versus a terrible movie with a small budget. This is an example of a good movie with a small budget.
Yeah.
It really, yes, there's a lot. I mean, when you look at the list of just trivia and of goofs on IMDb, there's so many little goofs and things because they just couldn't afford, to reshoot things and to get the continuity right. But they did such an amazing job with just not very much money. It's impressive.
I think the thing that I love watching, this movie really spends, what people don't realize about Halloween, if you haven't watched it in a long time, the movie opens up. I'll skip over the opening image for a second because we should talk about that. But the movie, basically, once you have the opening, the movie spends the rest of its time introducing, for the first 45 minutes, first half of the movie, introducing this character of Laurie, as she just goes about her life as a sort of virginal, but funny and smart babysitter in a tiny little Illinois town in and around Halloween in 1978. And the streets are it's overcast and there's leaves around, and I was realizing, all you're doing is just watching her interact with her friends, and it's so much fun, and I just loved the mood. I mean, weren't you guys entranced by just the vision of the fall that this film?
Especially considering the fall's fake.
It was actually March or April. Yeah. I know. I love that they said in the commentary that they just had, and it says in a few other places too, that they just had paper leaves that they painted the different colors, and they put them in a couple of bags, and they would just blow them with a fan at Jamie Lee Curtis,
yes.
so that it looked like it was fall. But if you look past the house that she's in front of, there's no leaves anywhere else.
And it's just
also palm tree.
Yeah.
And there's a palm tree. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so crazy that again, there's movies with way bigger budgets than this.
Sure.
That do not do what this movie did. This is where you can tell where people who are good at their craft create this, and you can go through the low budget. You can queue up a million low budget things on Netflix that have probably a bigger budget than this movie, and none of those have recreated something as iconic as this. And it's really pretty interesting.
Somehow the movie captures the feeling of Halloween, the holiday, not the franchise, but the feeling of cool, chilly October. They're wearing sweaters, they're walking around, they're chatting after school, and there's just this sort of chill in the air, but it hasn't quite affected anybody but Laurie because Laurie's the only one who's observed.
Who's got leaves blowing at her. No, and also though that it's not overkill because they couldn't get a hold of pumpkins because it wasn't the season 4, and they didn't, and it wasn't like now where people decorate really for Halloween, so it's just very subtle, but it's there, It's
Is that the case that in 1978, and I don't really have a memory particularly, did people not like put yard art all over the
No,
house?
not like we do. No, they do jack-o'-lanterns. That was about it. Maybe a couple of little things, but it wasn't like now. It wasn't like now with the big inflatables and all that crap.
Oh yeah, that's true. Although it is missing the pullover smock that had the name of whatever you were trying to be, along with the mask.
Or if you believe the Charlie Brown version, all the people with the sheet, they go. Actually, no, I take it back. There is actually a person with a sheet over them, pretending to be a ghost.
Yes.
So never mind.
but no, I completely believe this was Illinois. I mean, I watched this movie many times, and always believed it was. I just completely believed the illusion of small town.
It's convincing, man. I mean,
me too.
Yeah. And so to get back to where this movie actually begins, the movie begins in 1963, which is not as exotic and far away a time when the movie came out as it is now. That was 15 years earlier, so it'd be like if you had a movie come out now and you have the opening take place somewhere like around 1998 or so. This one, it's 1963, and we open up with a little boy who slaughters his sister after she has been fooling around with her boyfriend.
Well, and it's funny because like so we were watching the commentary, and Jamie Lee Curtis makes it because it's a continuous shot from the kids seeing. I guess you look through the window and you see the boyfriend and the sister making out. And then it kind of comes in. It's a continuous shot coming inside the house and following around the house and everything. And she said, basically, apparently they have sex and then he's done and putting on his clothes within that 40 seconds that they're doing.
I don't believe that for a second. And the reason I say that, when he's coming down the stairs, he's not adjusting his clothes or anything.
He's putting on his shirt.
He's pulling down his shirt. So
that's the point. I don't know, but you're probably right that I don't think. But the thing is, she's naked. I mean, she's got only her underwear on. So at least they had enough time in that 40 seconds or whatever for her to get her clothes off. But
it
anyway,
may be a continuous shot. I always saw it as there was some time where he was just hanging out or whatever.
Yeah,
but
it's a continuous shot up until the point when the little boy puts on his mask, and then the clown mask, and then it's a different. Shot at that point, looking through the eyes, which is a really interesting effect, having the whole scene where he kills it's very psycho because, you don't really see, like you said, it's not very gory, so all you're seeing is this, through these eye holes in this mask, this knife just kind of going up and down and her just, I guess it's an homage to Psycho, really.
Yeah. What makes the scene, and when I was a kid and I first saw this movie, what makes the scene gross to me is the sound, and this movie uses sound so well, but I just remember the very first time I saw that movie being so freaked out by first you get the stabbing sound. It just sounds like he's stabbing a rotten pumpkin appropriately enough, and then you go down and his kid's parents roll up and they take the mask off, and here's this kid with this blood splattered knife just standing there, and it's like the world's most demented postcard.
It's the weirdest shot because it's this crane shot that just kind of pulls up, and the parents just stand there looking at him.
They put their hands in their pockets.
Yeah, the mom puts her hands in her pockets. Yeah.
I like how he re-seeing this. I was like, wow, that could be Home Alone. That could be Macaulay Culkin. His expression and everything when they pull it off. It's like, huh. It could just as easily be him.
Yeah.
It's the dark side of Norman Rockwell, which I feel like you get all over this movie.
Right.
It is really funny, and it also establishes another weird thing that might be an accident to the filming, but it's the weird, blasé nature of the adult actors in these films. You can say what you will about the performances of the teenagers, but the adults are all monotonous and sort of stilted and false. So the adults, they come up, they go, Michael,
except for the psychiatrist,
except for Donald Pleasance, who we'll get to in a second. But yeah, we establish it right there. The parent, the mom puts her hands in her pockets and just sort of looks at him like, whatever shall we do? They haven't, if these are real people, we can only presume that it hasn't dawned on them yet that he's got a bloody knife in his hand. It's so strange, and that's going to continue because later when Laurie is in her, Laurie, our main character who we're following around, when she's in class, the teacher drones on with such monotony that it's as though she's a character in a Charlie Brown special, But instead of going wah 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 wah, she's like just sort of droning on in the distance, and so you can hear her talking about whatever book it is that they're studying, and as Laurie's just sort of going about her day. And Laurie, because she's smart and wonderful, she's able to both keep up with the monotony of the adults and also keep up with the shenanigans of the teenagers. So we have the boy. The boy gets sent off to the hospital, and so now we cut forward 15 years to 1978. There's nothing significant, I don't think, about the fact that that the beginning takes place in 1963. There's nothing particularly 60s-ish in a way. 1963 is merely 15 years ago. That's all it is. And so now it's 15 years later, and we're at a hospital, and we meet Donald Pleasance, who is Dr. Loomis, who is riding with this very classic chain-smoking nurse to go pick up Loomis's star patient and I guess take him to some sort of state board review to see if he's qualified to be released. And I always love this scene. This is yet another scene that just sort of establishes an incredible mood. I mean, what do you guys think when they come across?
It's like that. Is it Carnival of Souls? What's that movie called that we saw the play version of?
Carnival of Souls.
Yeah, Carnival of Souls. It's like that. It's like this weird. It feels like it's black and white because it's dark and they're all wearing white hospital gowns, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's these like there's like these posts, but they almost are reminiscent of gravestones for some reason because they're half posts. And so there's just these inmates from this insane asylum just wandering aimlessly through the fields. It's very surreal and
right. They're
bizarre.
in the yard. It's raining like crazy, and the
Is it
doctor.
raining like crazy?
Yeah, it's raining, and the doctor and the nurse are going to the hospital. And when they get to the gate of the state hospital, something bad has happened. They don't really spell this out, but clearly something terrible has happened because all the inmates are out and just wandering the yard, just on the other side of this like cattle fence.
Well, I like how they're all just like, wow, that's weird. I didn't think they'd let them out at night.
Right.
Because I didn't know they let them wander around. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously Loomis is like, no, this is messed up. Like
this is not right.
No, you are wrong, and this is so not good.
The funny thing. Yeah. The funny thing about Loomis in this scene is if this was the real world, he would be the bad guy because he's talking about doping a mental patient up so they can never be released and basically saying, well, there's really no point in helping this psycho.
Right.
Like if we were to run across somebody like that in real life, a doctor no less, we would think they were a terrible person.
Right. Well, he even says that he refers to him as it, and she's like, don't you mean he? And he's like, if you insist, or whatever.
Right.
And
right.
If you were to run across Dr. Loomis in real life, you would think he was a terrible person, but because it's horror movie logic, he's the hero.
We can take it for granted that he's telling us the truth. And I love that Loomis will, through the course of the film, give us something like 10 different variations of the monologue he starts in now. He is ready at a moment's notice to start telling you, I spent 15 years watching this young boy, all this. Mm-hmm. And I was watching Halloween 2 earlier today. He's still doing it, no matter who he's talking to. If they give him, if they go, what's the problem?
Obsessed.
Yeah, what's the problem, Doc? He'll start going into yet another monologue.
Drew, I could see another movie. I could see another movie where Loomis himself gets locked up for his obsession over Michael.
Yes.
You know what? They almost they tried to get Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee also, and I think about Christopher Lee in this part though, and I think Donald Pleasance is just vulnerable enough. Like if they had Christopher Lee running around. If Christopher Lee runs across Michael Myers, I think Christopher Lee would just break Michael Myers' neck and be done with it.
I cannot imagine in a million years, I cannot imagine Christopher Lee playing this part. That just
no.
It's absurd to imagine him going. I found this child 6 years old, and utterly devoid of emotion. I can't imagine that those lines being read by Christopher Lee and sounding. No, that just wouldn't work.
Peter Cushing probably could have worked though.
Yeah, maybe.
Loomis is a variation of a Van Helsing type. So
well, apparently Christopher Lee said it was the biggest mistake he ever made in his career to turn it around.
Yeah, because Donald Pleasance milked this part for like the next decade or so.
Yes, because he did several of them. There is actually, it's funny you should mention that about the bad guy doctor and so forth. And I was thinking about the movie Alone in the Dark with Jack Palance and Donald Pleasance. And this is one that Tony and I saw at the Alamo. And in that one, they spell out more. Donald Pleasance is very much a sort of liberal doctor who, believes that everybody in the asylum can be reformed. And Jack Palance is, if I recall, he's an inmate who has severe PTSD, but also, is trying to convince Donald Pleasance that he shouldn't be so naive. That, it was very interesting. It was sort of the reactionary extreme version of what you see here, which is that some people are evil and they deserve to be locked up. It's funny how much you have to forget that you don't know yet when you're watching this movie. Like when you're watching it the first time, you don't know what Michael's going to be. You don't know that he's going to come back and get a mask. You don't know that he's going to stalk Laurie. All this stuff, it's very weird.
A William Shatner mask, no less.
Yes. Well, so
in many ways, Michael Myers was the first of his type, because anything leading up to this is in what we think of as a slasher movie. Even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you were talking about mortal men, whereas there is something decidedly supernatural, even though they never really spell out what, about Michael Myers.
Can you explain that to me? Because, for instance, this is before Friday the 13th, right?
Yes.
Isn't that correct?
And Friday the 13th even took it even more overt than this, because whereas Jason is this undead thing, and it's spelled out for you. Michael Myers is evil, and because he's evil with a capital E, he can do things that normal people can't do. He can seemingly vanish. He can survive being shot, stabbed, thrown out of a window, and he's literally everywhere.
So is Michael? Does Michael? So this is the question. Let's actually jump to this. Suffice it to say, Michael gets back to town and starts, for no particular reason other than that she shows up, Michael starts stalking this one babysitter and her fun gang of babysitters on the night of Halloween. So is Michael magic? Is there magic in Michael, or is he just? Well,
I think Drew just spelled it out. I think he is magic.
Yeah, what Drew seems to be suggesting is that Michael is empowered by the magic of evil to be able to do things like have Wolverine powers when he gets shot and
vanish and move very quickly when he's
Are we to take? Is that? Are we to? I'm not sure how to ask.
He's not. It's not as spelled out as it got when we got into the 80s, because in the 80s they started to have fun with makeup effects, so they wanted to make all these crazy monsters like Chucky and Pinhead and Freddy Krueger, and where.
Well, my question is, are we to accept Michael as a human with human powers who's just extremely skilled? Like for instance, Michael does stuff. When Michael shows up, the first thing he does when he gets to the town, he goes to check out his old house. He's killed a dog. He's got his sister's tombstone because, who knows, that might come in handy later if he kills somebody. He's not Batman. He knows how to drive a car even though he's never been taught.
Well,
my favorite thing about that. Okay, go ahead, Joya. Yes.
The theory there is that he learned from watching Loomis whenever he's had to go to. There was something I read was one of the theories is that whenever he's had to go to these hearings or whatever, he's just watched Loomis and figured it out from there.
And Loomis maybe he's a genius.
Yeah, well, there's a throwaway line as well where he's like, well, maybe somebody taught him. Like maybe somebody.
Thanks for pointing it out. They did think about it, and so they give Loomis just this thing where he goes, "Oh, somebody must have taught him." But
what I like about all this though is how dogged he is. Like, unlike Jason, who kind of like, I mean, he's persistent, but he still kind of hangs out at Crystal Lake, and he has like these rules. But Mike Myers, he's ready, like, he's driving, some chick says something, and he slams on the brakes, and then decides, well, no, I can get him later. And he hangs out like...
No, he's just messing with her.
Jason,
he's like, oh, you think so?
And Michael are very...
Okay.
Jason and Michael are very similar, but also it's very important now that Jason has this childlike, what we associate as being childlike lack of intellect, whereas Michael Myers has this fiendish intelligence. Like, Jason would never dress himself up like the dead boyfriend and, toy with somebody.
Where he's like, or he's
be a ghost.
Like, it's like he has these little sense of humor things that he does. Like when he's in the like sheet. I'm going to hang out in this sheet. Hey, you should come back to bed. Oh, it's me, Michael Myers.
He goes, so let's talk about that for a second. When one of the girls, and I'm trying to remember now which one it is, but anyway, one of the teenagers is in bed with her boyfriend. The boyfriend gets up. Michael kills him. We'll talk about that later if we get a chance. But anyway, when he comes back, he's wearing a sheet over his head and the boyfriend's glasses. And so PJ Souls, I'm sorry, from Carrie. PJ Souls is there in bed, and she goes, well, come back to bed, and he just stands there. And Michael, the killer, is wearing this sheet and just standing there in the living room. Think about this. And he's just letting this play out as she loses her nerve and she gets annoyed and she gets up to get dressed. He lets that play out way past the point of discomfort before killing her. And it's an astonishing just bit of like dominance and control and sadism. He is a clever evil person. But what I was thinking about was
and strange. Like when he kills the boyfriend. And by the way, what a strange scene that is when he stabs him and basically pins him to a wall, but there's no blood, which is very interesting. And there's never any blood even on the wall because whenever she's wandering around later on, Laurie is, she doesn't see any blood or anything. But anyway, so he kills him, and then he just stands there and kind of cocks his head to the side like, that's interesting. Like he's just studying his work. Yes. Very odd character.
Okay, well, there's been one person I remember commented on that where they said, he takes the boy with the glasses, and these are teenagers, by the way. Michael's not interested in killing little kids. Has anybody noticed this?
Well, so far, we don't know what would have happened if the kids hadn't gotten away in the house.
Yeah, I think he would if he. I think he was just like, well, this is what I started with. I don't think he wouldn't, but who knows?
I get the impression that they're practically invisible to him. That little children, anybody under puberty, is practically a speed bump as far as Michael is concerned. Because the bully kids who are giving Tommy Doyle trouble, they run into him. One of them runs into him, and because at the beginning, the long beginning, Michael is just stalking around town. He goes near what we can presume is his old elementary or middle school, and is just watching kids.
Well, I think one of the things that makes this movie so amazing is that it's 90% of what you just said of him just kind of being around in the background and this just setting this mood where, you don't even notice sometimes. Like, we actually had to back it up to see what it was that Laurie's looking out the window of her school, and she's just staring at the car, and we knew it was the car that Michael stole from Loomis, from the nurse. But we couldn't tell why she was staring so intently at it. So we backed it up and realized that Michael's standing behind the car, but you don't notice because it's just his head. You just kind of see his head amongst this tree, basically. But it's stuff like that where she's like, oh, check it out. Or like you'll see him just kind of in the background of something. Or this one scene when she's freaking out because she knows that she's found the teenagers. She's found her friends that are dead now, and she's in the house, and she's been backed into various corners by her own fear, apparently. And so she's just up against the wall next to a dark doorway, and all of a sudden there's just the slightest light that illuminates his face, and you just are like flipping out, and she doesn't see it. But that's the kind of thing that makes this movie amazing.
Yes.
And so cheaply done, you know.
His face sort of, it abstracts out of the darkness.
Yeah.
You know, we're watching her screaming, you know, and sobbing against, you know, next to this dark doorway, and suddenly, just through a shift of light, you become aware that he's standing right next to her.
And you're screaming at the movie, going,
yes,
get away from there! Why are you standing next to that doorway?
But what I'm thinking about was the if you were to pretend for a moment that this were a Funny or Die sketch, you know, you think about all the work that Michael's got to put into all this crap. Like if he's across the street and he's like, there's that teenager I saw outside my house that I've decided to start stalking. Here's her school. I found the window where she's sitting in class, and luckily she's next to the window. That's kind of awesome. I'm going to park my car here and stand here, wait for her. Wait. Is she looking? Yes, she's looking. I'm standing. She's looking. She's looked away. Now I'm going to run really quick and get in the car.
Have you seen Behind the Mask?
No. What is that?
Okay, Behind the Mask is basically the horror movie equivalent of Spinal Tap, and they follow a film crew follows a slasher around as they set up all this stuff. And I without going too far into it, because we should probably do it the next time we do comedy horror.
Well, I did think whenever he steals the station wagon, I was hoping that one day we would get a like slasher road trip movie where it's like a bunch of slashers just on like more comedy horror. Just like, hey, get in! I've got the car. Oh man, that's so cool. Let's go. So you get this like Thelma and Louise road trip.
I do like
movie.
the idea of Michael and Freddie and Jason, you know, like sharing a station wagon and crossing the country and, you know, stopping for Funyuns and like listening to Boston.
I could just see the trailer for that, you know. In a world where
I would love for them to accidentally hit Pumpkinhead and run him over. Just that's their reaction. Like, oh, what is that? I don't know. Should I stab it? We stab things. Well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Go ahead and stab it. Yeah.
They could stop off at like the Children of the Corn place.
Exactly.
Or the pet cemetery. They like bury something.
Like, and the things that freak them out would be really freaky. Like, this is freaking me out. We don't get freaked out.
What do you mean? Together?
Yeah, you're not allowed to get freaked out, you idiot.
Yeah, but you know, I think as much as Michael Myers hates like nudity and all that, I kind of wondered if he like could work for like a fundamentalist. That's one of my notes. Like, you know, because he really kind of hates this. Like maybe Michael Myers should be employed like by like Fred Phelps or somebody. Like, oh man, these guys are really bad. Listen.
I think Michael Myers would think that was selling out. He does it for the love. He doesn't do it
and the
for
evil.
money.
And mostly he does it for the evil, though.
For the love of evil.
He's keeping it real and evil. And it's true. Okay, so there's a certain sort of crude psychiatry going on here, some sort of pop psychology from, you know, just like at the end of Psycho, you know, where with Michael Myers, let's see, he kills his sister after she has sex, and maybe it's a coincidence, but it sure seems this way. He kills his sister after she has sex. The two other babysitters are both sexually active. The final girl, the one who survives, is the one who is most sort of uninitiated into the realm of sexuality. Does that mean anything, or is it just a big coincidence that everybody always plays out? Because that's what people have been talking about for years now.
John Carpenter said he had no real, you know, anti-sex agenda. He was just trying to show teenagers doing things teenagers do,
right,
which is, I think, is honest as far as he's concerned. As far as all the other slasher movies that came out after this, Lord knows.
And the only reason that Laurie doesn't get killed is because she's so observant that she notices stuff, whereas the other people are so caught up in their little, you know, situations that they're in that they don't notice the killer.
I think that's right. I think I buy that anyway. I mean, I have no idea if it's right, but I completely buy the notion that what saves Laurie is that she's brilliant. I mean, she's really smart. She can see things happening. You know, she notices Michael when others don't. And by the way, you know what she's not in this movie?
Are idiots, right?
Yeah, well,
like she is going out with some truly stupid people. Like she hangs out with some true dummies.
Oh, I love these girls. Didn't you love watching them walk down the street?
It doesn't mean they're not stupid, though.
Just chatter about
yes,
yeah.
They talk about really dumb stuff. Like they're idiots.
Yes.
Like I mean, she's her.
I think Jason's love of PJ Souls is exposing itself.
Yeah, listen to their first conversation again. These people are stupid. Like these are like barely gonna pass. And
I'm like Beavis and Butthead right now.
They're like, I hope I pass. Oh man, I gotta graduate. Is there any way I can do extra credit? That's a conversation that's gonna happen if they didn't get killed. Like,
wow.
I agree. Well, I mean, to some extent, these are not the best actresses. I think PJ Souls is funny, but PJ Souls is not acting like a real person. I mean, her line readings are completely theatrical. You know,
I don't think like I don't know if the actresses are smart or not. I'm talking about the characters themselves.
No, the characters as babysitters are astonishingly irresponsible babysitters. I love the way that and maybe this is just the way babysitters were in the late 70s, but like you've got PJ Souls.
No, they weren't.
I don't remember her ever actually babysitting anybody. But
no, she's supposed to. That's the thing.
That's the problem. Yes.
Wait, no, which one? Wait, I'm sorry. No, you're right. You're right.
Annie is watching Lindsay, and she's basically doing everything but watch Lindsay.
Right. Okay, you're right. So the other girl, his name is Linda, is not. You're right. She's on a date. She's not babysitting. But the other chick, Annie, dumps her kid on Lori, and I'm just like, what does she think is going to happen when the parents come home? Especially given that Linda and her boyfriend are now over there getting it on.
You're giving her credit for thinking ahead.
Yeah.
This is the person, and I know it's a slasher movie, thing, but this is the person who spills something on her, and her immediate reaction is, "It's time to undress in the kitchen."
And by the way, she doesn't wear a bra because it's the 70s.
Isn't this what you do?
Their bras.
If you spill, butter, I think she spilled butter on her shirt. Don't you immediately strip down?
When I babysit, I not only take off my clothes in the people's kitchen that I'm babysitting for, I also borrow their dry cleaning and use their laundry. But fortunately, their laundry is in a different house than the house I'm in. So
one of the people in the chat room said, "Babysitters live in the now."
I have to say, I had irresponsible babysitters when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
and they got away with it.
Sure, I remember babysitters.
I always thought they were the fun babysitters because they would sit me down in front of the TV and let me watch.
I see how it is, Drew. You had that kind of babysitter.
Maybe you were a good. Hey, Julia, maybe you were a good babysitter.
Drew had one of those educational babysitters.
I remember babysitters who would sleep and just screw around. But I mean, the fact is, the truth is, most of these neighborhoods are pretty safe. What the heck is going to happen? I mean, generally, Michael Myers is not coming.
Well, we know now that what can happen is that a serial killer with a Shatner mask can come into your town. That's what.
But up until that happened, that weren't thinking that was going to happen.
Exactly.
So the worst that could happen was that the parents would come home and bust you because your friend having sex in their house and their child being missing, which is
alarming. You just brought up the interesting. Go ahead, Drew. Yeah.
One of the things that I was talking about with Jamie when I was watching this, she was like, "Well, why is she's running down the street? Why is nobody, checking on her?"
Well, they don't know
I pointed
her.
Out
they don't know
her.
Halloween.
It's Halloween. It's Halloween.
Right.
They could probably think it's somebody pulling a prank. Oh my
no,
God!
I don't think that's it. I think they don't know her, and she's flipping out. And this is a conservative suburb.
It's a small town. Of course, they know her.
You think they know her on that street? I don't think so, because she's babysitting in another person's house.
It's like the town I grew up in. I grew up in. You know everybody.
I think they know her.
I just think that they're nervous and scared.
Well, we
she's screaming.
We have not said what it is that you're talking about.
Okay.
What you're talking about is the scene.
So she runs out of the house and she's screaming, pounding on these people's door after Michael has tried to kill her and she's found all the dead friends. And these people turn on their lights, look out the window, and then turn off their lights and they ignore her. And I think it's because they're afraid. I think they're afraid that either she's psychotic or that whoever's after her is going to come after them as well.
Oh, I hear you saying this, and already my heart rate is increasing because they are afraid. That's exactly what's happening. It's a very frustrating scene. I mean, and this happens in real life. This is the most realistic thing in the whole movie, is when she goes screaming and limping across the street and bangs on somebody's door, they look out the window and then they don't open the door for her. It's terrifying, and that
I actually
is
had
really
something similar. Not that happened, but
You
I
had Michael Myers
whose electrical system was going out, and I stopped at a place. This is in rural Mississippi when I lived there, and knocked on people's doors and was like, "Hey, my car is really messed up," and they never would answer. And so I pulled down the road, and because my headlights went out, I actually got into a wreck. And I was
oh my God!
Like people who decided I was scary, So yeah. People are weird about that. They didn't even turn on their lights. They were like, just ignore it, it'll go away.
Man, and I'm telling you, that was really scary. That is a very scary moment in the movie. Well, where are the parents anyway? I mean, it's funny. At least there are people in that house.
They're in Halloween parties.
I guess they are.
It's the 70s. They're at like a key party.
Key parties. Halloween key parties. Hey, key parties with masks, even better.
Right. Let's see. I don't even know where to go for that. No, I wanted to. There was some hint of something of a key party in this movie, but I can't remember where it was.
What? No, there wasn't.
You made a mention.
Okay. No, I did not make a mention of that.
I'm not just making this up.
Yes, you totally are.
Okay. I'll let it go.
I like how Loomis, there's a point where he has this like, get out of here, but he's like this like playful, okay kids, when they're in when he goes back to the house, where like he has this moment of like where he's actually like messing with people. So it's weird that he has that, like, even though he's deathly serious the rest of the time. There's this one moment where he's like, kids.
Yeah, the two little kids are like trying to goad one another to go up and knock on the door of the Myers house, which is rumored to be haunted. And it's Lonnie. It's the same dumbass kid that was telling Tommy that the boogeyman's going to get him. And,
man. Yeah. Speaking of which, I really, really wish, like, I can't remember what movie it was where there's some, like, crazed lunatic throws a kid. It was one of those, like, but I really, at the point where he runs into Mike Myers after he's bullied the other kid, is really, I was hoping Myers would just pick him up and just.
I assume you mean the Michael Myers from this movie and not Mike Myers from Saturday Night Live. Right?
Either one, that would be funny too.
Your obsession with this Canadian comedian is you know what? That sounds like something that Jason Voorhees would do, because Jason Voorhees is really, really physically strong. So I remember him like picking people up in sleeping bags and swinging them around.
Yeah, I wish.
It's that difference between, this where it's sort of more subtly supernatural, and then when you get into the 80s, everything becomes much more over the top.
Michael is, Jason is extremely strong. Michael is just almost magical in how subtly he moves around. I mean, I think
Michael's pretty strong. He lifts up that kid and pins him to the wall. That's not something a lightweight could do. And he's not, unlike Jason. One of the problems I had with the Michaels they got in the sequels is I think almost because they were trying to imitate Jason, they kept getting bigger and bigger guys to play Michael Myers, where I think Michael Myers is actually much more shocking looking when he's more slender.
He's a very normal-sized guy. And do you remember the moment in here where Laurie's walking down the street? This is still early on. She's with Annie. And she looks up ahead, and Michael is just standing behind the bushes. And then and he times it really well because he waits until she can see him really well, and then he just sort of slowly steps out of the frame.
Such a jerk. It's awesome. I love his tableau that he does whenever because he's got to be strong because he can pick up a freaking headstone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where he stored that, I have no idea. But the fact that he's like, check this out. This is really, really gonna freak him out. Not only will I kill her, I'm gonna put the headstone there. This moment. Whenever she comes in, it's gonna be golden. And you know he's smiling under the mask at that point because he's just like, yes, all of this has all come together.
And when he looks up,
happening.
You know, in a way, he's kind of like that little Spirit of Halloween guy from Trick or Treat. You know, you remember the little guy with the popsicle?
Sam.
Yeah, Sam. He's like that. There's a certain sort of gleeful, you know, I am the angel of Halloween tricks sort of business.
He,
you know,
off camera, he's doing the yes, like with the elbow move. This is the moment. Oh man.
Well, because I guess he's still kind of a kid. I mean, he never really got to mature past that 6-year-old murderer.
He's evil. I mean, he's evil personified.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So they go like.
He's an evil imp. You know, in a sense, he is. I mean, Loomis would suggest that there never really was a Michael, or if there is a Michael, Michael is a suppressed creature inside of an evil that.
Well, it is important to note that you know, in the script and in the credits, he's always known as the Shape. He's not called Michael Myers.
He's that's a very good point. Yeah, he's the Shape. He's the Shape that's standing out there, you know, sort of in amongst the laundry that's been hung out.
And he looks blank. I mean, yes, it's a William Shatner mask, but when they spray painted it white and, you know, fluffed up the hair, it doesn't really look like anybody. And then, you know, then he's got this very blank outfit on that's just gray.
Yeah. No, it's right. They've got that jumpsuit, which is, you know, very, like you said exactly, that it's perfectly blank. It's a perfect costume. Now, when I don't want to get too much into this, but when Zombie remakes this movie in whenever that was, like 2010 or 2009, I can't remember exactly. Rob Zombie remakes it, and he tried really hard to make this costume be more realistic, which is, I think, an insane proposition.
Well, there's a couple things wrong. Like, I haven't seen the movie, but, like, there's a couple things. A, making it more realistic. Like, it's a mask and a jumpsuit. Like, how, like, he got a jumpsuit from a person. Like, how much more realistic can, like...
Well, Rob Zombie, his theory was, so he got this jumpsuit, so it needs to be, like, real greasy and grimy and have lots of texture on it. That's all zombie stuff, too, you know.
But nobody
who cares?
Around, like, people
hey, do you guys, let's go, can we go back for a second to the scene, actually, when he gets the jumpsuit? How, do you think that Loomis found that body, or did he just find the car? Because we don't see him find the body. Do you think he found the body first and then he finds the car?
I think he finds the car, and I think he may have seen the body, but he's so like, well, can't do anything about that. I got to find Michael Myers that he doesn't even like. I bet he reported it to the police.
Yeah, because that's the first person that Michael kills. Well, I mean, obviously he must have killed somebody to get out of the asylum, but the first person that he kills in the movie, even though we don't see it till later, is that guy. He kills the guy to get his jumpsuit, and he doesn't even take his car. He keeps the car he had.
Because again, like you can, and you think about it, like I think that's part of the problem with like the remake is, giving him a backstory is ridiculous because you're not supposed to. He's supposed to be the Shape. That's what makes it scary. The fact that someone's brother could just be the most evil thing out there for no good reason. That's what makes it scary. It doesn't make sense because it's so far out of our realm. Like, this person's pure evil. We're told that. That's it. And the other thing with, like, the jumpsuit, like where you're saying, there's all shades of, like, yes, you can be in a grimy Rob Zombie universe where it's your mechanic who's been wearing that jumpsuit for 5 years and never cleans it. But if you go to a mechanic even, like, their jumpsuits, not everybody's a redneck.
Right.
Well, not everybody's a redneck grease monkey that has been in the backwoods. Like, this could have just been a dude who works at an auto place. You know, like...
Well, these are working class and middle class folks, but it's all seen with a certain amount of just sort of romanticism. Whereas Rob Zombie, I think we've piled on him a lot, but But Rob Zombie can't look at the middle class and the working class with romanticism. There's something with Zombie. There's something really shameful and troubling about the working.
Well, he very much riffs on, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre's idea of, you know, working class people are psychotic, essentially.
Right.
You know, they can't be trusted. As somebody who is both from a rural background and a working class person, I get annoyed with how many, like, I like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I do kind of get annoyed with how often that particular cliche is recycled. But
like somehow you live in the backwoods is going to make you crazy. That surely that's not the case. Surely Thoreau would have.
I've seen, you know, I live really, really rural area. I mean, 20 minutes to get to the nearest like H-E-B sized grocery store, right?
Right.
And let me tell you, I saw a lot of crazy. There were people who, I swear that parts of the Squidbillies are, you know, that there's a non-squid version of those people in Squidbillies. Like, trust me, I've seen it. It's true. However, the fact that that's the norm is where it gets a little bit like, you know, I don't know. And again, I don't dislike Rob Zombie's thing. I just think that for a lover of that, when you say like, oh, I'm going to make him have a backstory, I mean, I guess you're trying to make it your own, but it doesn't make it scarier. It's scarier that he's just evil, man. Where Loomis like looks at him, he's like, I mean, he's scared. He's scared himself. He's like, you haven't seen what I've seen, and no one who hasn't seen that will believe him. That's why the people are like, what do you mean you're going to put him on Thorazine?
Whereas to say that Michael is killing a bunch of people because he's slipped some kind of rod in his head because he's been abused by a drunk stepfather, you know, I mean, seriously, who the hell cares? That's not. I mean, that is not enough to create Michael freaking Myers. And so then
the other thing that Rob Zombie, I think, really misses the point, you know, when we're talking about the costuming and the whole character of Michael Myers, is he chose this very, you know, he got Taylor Mane, who's a big, weird-looking wrestler, and, you know, when you put him in the Michael Myers costume, it's, you know, even when he's not in the Michael Myers costume, he's a monster, effectively. Yeah. Whereas, you know, in this movie, you know, and I think what's another thing that differentiates Michael Myers from other masked characters in the horror genre is that Michael Myers is actually a very normal-looking man under all of this, whereas, you know, like characters like Jason or the Phantom of the Opera, you know, are
his
wearing
masks
because they're, his eyes messed up because she poked him in the eye, but other than that, he's a perfectly normal-looking man, whereas, in fact, one of the girls in the movie actually describes him as cute, and, you know, again, Jason or the Phantom of the Opera, they're covering their face up because they're monsters. They're hiding this.
Well, I mean, so one last thing about the zombie movie, what that movie does well is it's true when Tyler Mane wearing a big jumpsuit, that guy's massive. So you really do believe that she's in real danger when she's hiding behind the walls and he's just punching through the walls to get to her. That's really scary, but it's a different movie. It's a totally different ride.
And that's, you know, I totally, you know, hey, you're going to do it, you're going to make it your own. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, being too slovenly can be bad. I think just giving him a backstory, to me, kind of really killed it. Like,
I have a question.
Is not what's scary about Michael Myers.
I have a question. You're talking about something you said reminded me of this. Do you think that Michael is really trying to kill Laurie, or do you think that he's not really trying? Because the fact is, like, when he stabs his knife into the couch, you know, he totally could have killed her at that point. Or, you know, whenever she falls over the rail, I don't think he intends for her to fall over the rail. I think because he just slashes her arm. He doesn't kill her. Do you think?
Is he trying to kill Laurie?
Is he trying to kill Laurie? And also, is the second movie where you find out that, in fact, she's his sister, is that already in the mind of the director at this point, so that's why that would be a reason why he wouldn't want to kill her necessarily?
My guess is, and I haven't looked it up, Drew may know more about this than me, my guess is since it was originally not called Halloween and starting a franchise and stuff, that was just kind of, hey, this will be interesting. And B, I think he's just, because he's so used to being able to do whatever he wants, like, he's going to string it out, but I think he definitely wants to kill her. I think the end goal is definitely to kill her.
And even, I have to say, even it's hard to like be of two minds here. Obviously, this movie doesn't know the second movie is going to happen. We know that for sure. But even in the second movie, when we do know that Laurie turns out to be Michael's sister for reasons that I don't even recall right now, Michael still totally wants to kill her. I mean, he walks up to her bed and thinks she's in the bed and stabs the bed a bunch of times, and it just so happens that she's not there. So Michael's not interested in saving her life. I think Tony's right. I think Michael just likes to string stuff out. I think that's why Michael jacks around with falling down every time she stabs him.
Their original intention, or at least in Deborah Hill's mind, is the reason why he was stalking her in the first movie is that she reminds him of his older sister. So there is that sister link. So, I mean, I guess you could say that that was already, gestating in their minds when they came back for the screenplay for Halloween 2. But Lord knows.
Yeah. I think if we pretend that Halloween 2 never happened, then this is just a movie about the boogeyman. He fixates on Laurie because she's the first interesting girl that he sees. I think there is a connection with his sister. I think he stalks her and stalks kids and wanders around the town. And he's the boogeyman. He honestly is. That's what this is. And he gives us a great sort of exercise through the evening of Halloween. He messes around with pumpkins and tombstones, and he messes around with doors, and he sneaks up on people, and he strangles people and knifes them. And then in the end, he disappears, just like the evening of Halloween will disappear. And I think that's all it is. I mean, but that's because of it's a pure single episode. And then you have sequels, and they make it more complicated. Have you guys? Has anybody here? Go ahead. Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, Laurie Strode is actually the most important person in the Halloween universe. Like, I like to pretend that there's only 3 movies: Halloween 2 and H2O.
Yeah, explain the whole franchise, ignoring the zombie reboot, because it's complicated. And I have on top of my TV right now, I just picked up from the library, Halloween's 4, 5, and 6, because I haven't seen them. I don't even think I've ever seen 4 and 5. 3 is not a Halloween movie at all. So let's recap. 1 is the night he comes home. 2 is like 3 years later, filmed 3 years later, but it takes place, if I recall, I've started watching it today, it takes place like 90 seconds later. It literally just picks up. It's the rest of the same night. Same night. And then Michael dies at the end of it. I haven't finished watching it, but I remember this. He dies at the end of it. And so no more Michael. They do a Halloween 3 that's unrelated to Michael. And then Michael comes back in 3 movies, bam, 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 that I have not seen. Has anybody here seen the triple movie cycle that came in Halloween?
There's that's its own continuity where they deal with this whole cult of Thorn, which is what is actually driving Michael, and it's.
I actually kind of like some of that, but I understand why. Again, I'm like on the fence, right? Because I'm like, like he doesn't need a backstory. But then when they kind of gave him one, I guess, is it 5 where he gets broken at the very end? He gets broken out of the prison.
Yeah,
I actually like that ending. Like, I think that's cool, but. As far as did it need to be that, that's
I remember liking that too. That there's this man in black who apparently is on the earth to like sort of smooth things over for Michael and break him out of prison and stuff like that. That was all pretty cool.
I thought that was neat, but again, it didn't. That could have been another movie.
Yeah, I like Donald Pleasance in those movies. I don't really like anything else about them.
I hear you. I can't tell you if they hold up because like I say, they're sitting there. I haven't watched them yet. They could be terrible. The funny thing is, I just bitched about Zombie creating all this continuity, and yet we're basically saying we have a weird fondness for these movies that create a weird continuity for me.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Well, but there is no, like, you know, even the zombie films are an excellent example. I mean, there's like 3 divergent Halloween universes. There's the, you know, Halloween 2, Halloween H2O movies. There's the other, you know, the Cult of Thorn version of it. And then there's the Rob Zombie one. You know, don't even get me into the one where they have Busta Rhymes in it. We'll really pretend that one doesn't exist.
Halloween Resurrection, which in theory is part of the mainline Halloween continuity that goes Halloween, Halloween 2, H2O, and Resurrection.
Oh, God, that movie.
You can pretend it doesn't exist. I'm actually perfectly happy to, when I come across a movie in a cycle that I don't agree with.
H2O, and I hope we get around to doing it someday, but H2O, they should have just stopped, because that is the best ending to a franchise that I have ever seen. Laurie Strode lops off Michael Myers' head.
Yes.
The end.
Well, I kind of wish, like, actually, I had a note, because I was like, look, if there's a psycho, that's what you do. You do not, like, there's no court that will convict you after all those murders if you are the one who cuts off the psycho's head to prevent him from getting up, even though you don't know that that's it. But if you want to just stab and stab and stab and stab and stab to keep this, or shoot, or whatever you need to do, at that point,
Are you referencing the beginning of Halloween Resurrection? Is that what you're talking about, where she's on the roof with him and you know what? This is going way far afield in Laurie Strode. I do have to say this.
What do you guys? Go ahead.
Well, in H2O, there is this point, this wonderful point, where Laurie, who is now 20 years older, realizes that Michael has come for her. And so she's arranged for everybody to be gone from this little island in Napa Valley. It's not literally an island. It's an enclosed, walled-in school in Napa Valley. And so she locks the doors and locks the gates, and then she just takes to the mall with an axe in her hand and starts screaming his name. And it's the coolest thing. It is truly this thrilling moment of seeing Jamie Lee Curtis start to stalk Michael Myers.
By the way, she doesn't really look much older in that movie. Like, I had, like, another one of my notes is, like, she doesn't look, even though she's the only teenager in the movie, she does not look like a teenager in this movie. Like, she was just always the age Jamie Lee Curtis is.
Isn't she wonderful?
It's so weird. Like,
Jamie Lee Curtis is delightful, and there's a new commentary on the Blu-ray that Joy was mentioning earlier, and it's so wonderful to hear Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter.
Yeah, it's like they're an old married couple because they're just constantly bickering back and forth. Like, she remembers everything perfectly, and so she keeps telling him, no, that's not how it happened. And then he just makes fun of her because she gets so scared by everything. Like, as she's watching it, she keeps going,
that's awesome.
You know, God, that's so terrifying. Oh, my God. And he's like, you are the best audience. And she's like, that's very scary.
It's really delightful. I just had the biggest grin on my face the whole time listening to it because Jamie Lee Curtis is totally gracious and cool and fun. I hate commentaries generally. I mean, commentaries on DVDs and Blu-rays usually just are a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. But this one is totally not. It was.
Well, the Carpenter ones are pretty good. Like, the one for The Thing is really good.
Oh, yeah, no, that's totally true. And the same thing. It must be him. He must have this way of getting his performers to feel comfortable just sort of chilling out with him on tape, because Kurt Russell was the same way. He had the best time talking about The Thing, you know, and joking with John Carpenter. That's totally true.
Which, by the way, when they're showing The Thing from Another Planet, like, logo, I had forgotten how close that the logo was to just The Thing. Like, I didn't realize they had reproduced it, because they talk about like how they had to do it, and I had no idea that it was, you know, I hadn't seen Thing from Another Planet in forever.
Yeah,
so I was like, hey, that's really cool.
Because that's what's playing on the plot is that the teenagers who are babysitting, everybody on this one is babysitting on one street, and they're all watching the same like 6-hour monster movie marathon, and they showed Thing from Another World, and you know, I just loved all of that stuff with the kids watching the black and white TV and you know, carving the pumpkins and hanging out. I mean, as a child of the 70s, you know, because I would have been 6 years old in 1978. This is my childhood you're seeing here. This is precisely what my own what my house looked like.
So you had a serial killer kill your family as well?
Yes. The family that you know is actually the second family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we don't talk about them.
Serial killer is his brother, by the way, just coincidentally. Only Jason didn't know until a decade ago or so.
That explains a lot, actually.
But no, Laurie, you would love that commentary. We should talk about the music because, unfortunately, I have a feeling we could just talk about basically stuff about this movie for 6 more hours. But we should totally talk about the music.
Oh, that's amazing music.
Yeah.
So simple and so powerful.
Tony, we weren't even recording when you were talking about Carpenter's composition.
Yeah, well, he's really good at themes. Like, they're not huge production, scores, but his work in making themes that stick with you, because that's music I like. I write, for example, riff-based music. I am not a big prog person. That's not how I write personally. And so, to me, songwriting is something that you kind of feel in your gut more than oh, look, they changed this crazy time signature, now this and that. Even though that's really good, and I like some of that, personally, when I sit down to write, it's much more like this. And he is just a master of making these awesome
very
themes
simple
that stick with you.
Yeah.
And, some of it uses maybe sometimes some dated by now keyboard stuff, and we go, oh, that sounds like this, dated. But they stick with you no matter what. And, to be such a good director and then also be able to orchestrate these awesome themes, with pretty simple means. He's not using he's not getting a symphony to do this stuff. He's has his keyboard set up and, maybe gets a guitarist and stuff, bassist, drums, when he's not using just synth.
There's some electronic stuff going on in this. It's 78, so I don't know what kind of keyboard he's using, but he's got piano, and then he's got some weird sort of electronic keyboard sounds.
Well, there was still there's a lot of keyboard stuff you could use, but the fact that he keeps using those, and he's using those to great effect in most of his movies,
and changing from a major key to a minor key, which is it was a really neat effect.
Yeah, he's really, really good. I think in some ways underrated as far as, if somebody else had written these themes that wasn't the director, those people would be getting oh man, well his score for this is really good. The fact he does both and, executes so well at both is something to be said. Also,
it's beautiful music, and everybody knows it. When the Halloween theme is one of those themes, like the Twilight Zone themes, that everyone knows.
Yeah. Also, I really love, one of the things I love about the sound design is how much of the POV Michael Myers breathing noise that you get, even when it's not POV shots, the way he mixes it in and out is really for drama. I noticed that a lot, and I was like, wow, that's actually a really interesting way of doing that, because it's, it's so effective, and it's such a different kind of thing that had been done in a lot of other movies, I think, Well,
okay, now that you mention that, we hear that sound, and in fact, almost all the sound, I'm amazed at how good this guy is. Now, mind you, he had already made Assault on Precinct 13, so it's not like we're talking about a first-time director. But nevertheless, look how perfect all the lighting is always, you watch, we've talked about color timing before, and you just film actors, you film, Mel Gibson crossing the street getting out of a car. And if you look at the dailies, it doesn't look like a movie, It takes work to make the film look right. And, in adjustments and color timing and everything. Carpenter has done such a killer job getting all this movie to match up properly, different times of day. And the same thing with the sound. All the sound is secondary. All the dialogue, because so much of it is recorded outside. Everything that's recorded outside has been looped in a studio. So nothing is the original sound. It's all just a very carefully handcrafted creation. And it's amazing to me how, I have no doubt this guy is an insane control freak. He seems that way on his commentaries, but he's a gifted director. It's funny that he hasn't made a lot of classics, really. When it comes
at one point he goes,
what are you talking about?
I mean, I'm thinking
He's
about
made a lot. He has made a lot of The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, and Escape from New York, which is one of my favorite ones.
Escape from New York. Even Starman is well regarded.
Well, I'm just saying that Carpenter falls as much as he rises. There are a lot of opportunities. Yeah, I love John Carpenter. Don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of lesser Carpenter movies where he's not using any of his tricks. It's clearly just a film. I mean, I don't think Village of the Damned brings anything, although I enjoy it. I think it's a perfectly competent movie. But
what about In the Mouth of Madness, though? Beautiful. That's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, that's true. And even when he's bad, he's still pretty good. So,
well, I have a certain affection for vampires, even though I don't think it's a good movie.
Wow, I'd forgotten about vampires. No, there's nothing artsy about. There's none of these director tricks that he did on whatever it is, $200,000 or whatever. There's none of the artistry in vampires.
Well, before we get on to other movies from John Carpenter, I should say, now that we have gotten on to other movies by John Carpenter, maybe we should start wrapping up.
Yes. Well, that's true.
The John Carpenter, save it for the John Carpenter retrospective.
Yes, and we can find out if I'm wrong. I mean, maybe it turns out on second viewing that Village of the Damned is an unsung masterpiece of John Carpenter, and it may well be. Okay, we should wrap up and get final thoughts, and then do endorsements. So let's go the same way. Tony, Drew, Joya, and then I'll go, and then we'll come around again for Tony. What are your final thoughts, and anything else that you might want to throw in there about Halloween?
Like I said before, I mean it's a solid. There's a reason it's a classic. It's much better than a lot of movies that were done with much higher budgets, and even movies now where you're like, okay, why does sci-fi, for example, make the movies they do?
Yeah.
And in '78, this movie was created. I think the same thing about seeing Faust from the 20s and going, there's really you can tell it's the director or the people involved, the cast, the crew, as a whole. Like, why was Faust able to be made? And you look at it and you're like, that's pretty amazing that they did these shots in the 20s.
Yeah.
And yet we go with irony, now as a selling point when you want to just make a movie, as good as this one, as far as, it's a slasher flick, but there's a reason why it's copied so often. And it's got, great performances. Across the board, it just rocks, and it's definitely, I should watch it more than, you kind of want to revisit more than just in October, but definitely every Halloween, it's a go-to,
Absolutely.
And, again, like we talked about, the themes, the what it sets up. There were a bunch of movies around the same time that, for whatever reason, had, similar slasher things going on and weren't as effective. So, kudos to, everyone involved for making this, for sure.
Yeah. Drew, Mr. Halloween Man himself, a person who loves Halloween more than anybody I know, how can you wrap up your feelings about this movie?
Oh, that's such a hard question. We Tony just got through saying, yeah, it's a slasher flick. This is the slasher flick, and right. I am not a devotee to the franchise of Halloween. That is an important distinction here. I am, however, very devoted to this film. I think that this is arguably the best slasher movie ever made. And I the only thing I think that might inch up on this are two other classics, is be Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Psycho. This is not an ounce of fat on this movie. This is a lean, mean killing machine, and just love it to pieces.
That's wonderful. Julia, any final thoughts on seeing Halloween?
Well, I don't even think it is a slasher film as much as like a suspense thriller, because the whole thing is that it's not a gory, he's not going around slashing everybody. He's just, it's all about mood and spookiness, and then people end up dead, and kind of mysteriously almost, because you just...
Well, slasher does not necessarily denote gore. Slasher is like a certain stylistic thing. Like it's not a splatter movie. That's like a thing that gets crossed over into slasher a lot. But this is... Well,
that's what I'm saying, is that to me, the reason I like it so much is because it's not the typical slasher movie. It's more like it's all suspense and mood and simplicity. It's so pure in its simplicity, that I really appreciate that. And like I said, the fact that they had low budget probably had a lot to do with it. But I mean, it's all about mood and just creepiness. It's like, where's Waldo? Find Michael in this frame, and then the music, which again, so simple and so eerie. I just love it. Just the little camera tricks are all about, what's in the foreground, what's in the background. But there's nothing, it's not over the top like so many horror movies now where, it's all CG and it's all just, I don't know. I just feel like it's just kind of a roller coaster ride, a lot of these. And this one, it's a haunted house. I mean, it's so spooky. So I really like this movie a lot.
My final thought, there's a wonderful book called Men, Women, and Chainsaws by Carol J. Clover that talks about everything that's involved in the slasher movies that came after Halloween. But this one is not part of that cycle. This one is really its own thing. I cannot imagine a better movie to play at Halloween time. As you're going about your business in your house, just have it playing in the background, have that music there, and it'll set you ill at ease and put a chill on your evening and make you distrust the world. And it's a wonderful thing that you should bring to yourself. I think that I love Halloween. This is truly a delightful film. So okay, let's do endorsements. Same direction. Tony, you've been gone for weeks and weeks, so what do you have to urge us to go and do or watch or experience or whatever?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk about Fantastic Fest, which had some pretty cool horror. I need to remember what they are and kind of post those on the Facebook page. But one that stood out, and I resisted wholeheartedly because I was just flat out sick of found footage movies. And this goes with when people say, well, isn't that played out? The answer is always zombies, vampires, whatever you want to name. The answer is always, there's always room for a good one. And so it took several of my friends telling me to go see this movie, and then I didn't get in to see another movie that I was hoping to get into, and I was like, well, I'll go see it. It's a movie called Affliction. Awesome found footage movie. I told myself I was going to end on Troll Hunter because I love that movie, and I just wanted to end on a high note, and I'd seen a lot of super crap found footage movies. But Affliction brought me back around, and I think it's done really well. There's a good explanation for why they're filming things. There's still some of the problems of I don't know if you'd still be filming, but it's done really well. I have no idea if it has distribution. I should probably post, I'll have to post a few more of the movies that I saw that I really liked. As far as, there were a few that were more suspense, revenge stuff, but as far as just flat-out horror, when it comes around, Affliction was really cool. As far as not horror, I was really pleasantly surprised, and hopefully it's not too much because I actually got to meet and talk to the people involved in making the movie, but Elijah Wood is in a new movie called Grand Piano, and it's super suspenseful. It sounds like a movie that won't work because it's about him being a concert pianist when he gets up to play this piece, and he hasn't played in a while for reasons that are, they go into. A sniper says, "Hey, if you don't play this piece perfectly, I'm going to shoot your wife." There's a sniper in the balcony, and it takes place in real time, and it sounds like something where you're like, what? I don't know if that'll work, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, not just because, I was talking to the director who's super cool, and, I met the art, the production designer, just they're super cool people, but it was actually a surprise for me, like, well, I know these people are cool. Is their movie good? And then you're like, wow, that was actually really enjoyable and pretty suspenseful, actually. And so that was really cool too. Those are my recommendations. Oh, and finally, if you're lucky enough to have cash to get it, Pacific Rim. I'm jealous because Pacific Rim comes out on Blu-ray tomorrow. I don't know if they'll do a version that has like the extra, rumored 40 minutes of stuff that was filmed. But I am, as a monster movie fan, robot fan, I really, 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 really want to see that again on Blu-ray. And so that's my recommendation. I thoroughly, 4-year-old me and 40-year-old me were high-fiving virtually across space and time every time I watch that movie. So
very cool. All right, Drew, you have any endorsements for us?
I do. Again, a few weeks back was my birthday, so I'm kind of filtering through all the comic books that were given to me. But this may leave a few other comic book people scratching their heads, but I got 1602 by Neil Gaiman, which I know at the time was not actually very well received. But I have to say, I kind of dig it, and it's probably the most straightforward Neil Gaiman thing I've ever read. It's pretty much let's transpose the Marvel universe back into early colonial period, but it works, and it's a lot of fun. And if you're a Marvel Comics fan as well as a Neil Gaiman fan, I think you'll find a lot of things to like about it. I also received the first season of Superman the Animated Series, and I have to say I'd forgotten how much I love that cartoon. And it's one of those things, like, now that I'm watching it, like, I'm retroactively, like, going, man, I kind of liked Man of Steel when I first saw it, but now that I'm comparing it to this, the movie kind of blows. They should have just taken this and made a live-action version.
Very cool. No, I remember it really with Tim Daly, right? As Superman. I mean, that was
the voice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was wonderful. In fact,
well, the Lobo episode alone. I remember that the first draft of Superman Returns was supposed to have Lobo in it, and at the time I was like, really? And then I watched the episode with Lobo on this. I was like, yeah. That really would have worked. Why didn't they do that?
He's a hilarious character. Yeah. Very cool. All right, Julia, did you have anything to endorse?
Well, I just endorsed my annual traditional program during this time period, which is It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and is that the one we reviewed? Yeah, we reviewed.
Oh yes, we have an episode on that. Yeah.
So check out our Castle Dracula on that one.
On the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Yeah, that's a fun conversation, actually. In fact, we recently posted all of our Halloween episodes in a posting on the Facebook page, so you can find it there. My endorsement this week, actually, I just got the X-Files. So there's a new X-Files comic book series from IDW, which I haven't started reading yet. But one of the reasons I haven't started reading it is because I'm just starting. They also collected all the classic X-Files comics from Stefan Petrucka, who wrote this just fantastic series of X-Files comics several years ago, with art by Charlie Adlard, the guy who does The Walking Dead. And it is really wonderful. It's the best tie-in comic I've ever read. And I would put it even above the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics written personally by Joss Whedon. I think Stefan Petrucka just hits the X-Files comics out of the park. When you think, wow, what would make an X-Files comic interesting? Because, you go, wow, so it'll just be the two FBI agents and it'll be like the show, only it's in a comic. It's not like that at all. There's real depth to it, and it's very, very amazing. So that is what I have for this week, but I'll have more next week. Wow. I am so excited we got a chance to talk about Halloween. This is one of those we could talk about probably all night long. We could probably next year do another episode on Halloween and just pick different topics. This is a classic film. So thank you, everybody, for listening. If you like us, leave us a review on iTunes. Tell your friends. I want this episode to get out to more people than we've ever had. So if you like listening to us, send it to your friends and have them listen to us. Play it in your dorm. Write us. Join all the many multitude of question and answers that Drew starts on the Facebook page. And,
which, by the way, thank you, people. Like I love the fact that the Facebook group has started to come to life. I've loved all the interaction going on in there recent. Please keep it up.
Yeah, so that's been really enjoyable. So thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic evening, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Halloween.
Bye.